Filmmaking. Once an aspirational thing for fans of entertainment, now reduced to if your film doesn't cost 200 quintillion smackaroonies and be made majoritarily of a board of people who couldn't give a curry-stained fart about quality film crafting, it just ain't worth it. Before we get started, this video is brought to you by my own cynical view of the entertainment industry. Stick around to the very end to see exactly what that can do for you. For ages, more movies and TV shows had a certain amount of inherent care put into them because they were the brainchildren of people with surprisingly functional brains, before they all got replaced with the same drilling consumer sludge that seems to populate filmmakers' heads right now. This mindset can obviously apply to storytelling and writing, as I have demonstrated previously with content, but this time I've turned my bleary, bloodshot eye to special effects. It should be prefaced that I am not a scientist in this field, merely a concerned consumer who likes to think he's retained a decent amount of his inhibitions despite what the universe keeps slingshotting directly into my DNA. Special effects in movies is a severely underappreciated craft that is disappearing more and more as we progress through the alarmingly bleak and corporatized digital golden age, specifically with regard to stunt work and props. Computer-generated imagery is cool and innovative and is probably harder to tackle than Cristiano Ronaldo after a surprise Red Bull promotion, but practical effects deserve respect in a different and arguably more important way. In the same way someone should be commended for standing in the path of such a formidable entity as a caffeine-riddled Premier League cash cow. Firstly, stunt work. Stunting is like hunting a moose. It's fraught with danger and you have to be careful when attempting to do so. Also, you should probably have a predisposition to being in pain, because you're likely going to be in it despite your 2 years of moose nabbing experience. Good stunt work is something you don't really notice, similarly to a really nicely painted wall opposite one that has about 3 months worth of crusty mold built up on it. You only notice it if it's really bad. Stunt work is used to complement cinematography, so if one is bad, it makes the other component worse by comparison. But if both are bad, then you get something like the gate climb in Taken 3. More than 10 camera cuts are used to show Brian Mills climbing over a fence. More than 10. Meanwhile, nearly 40 years ago, Indiana Jones jumped off a horse onto a moving tank in only one camera take. With both of these sequences in mind, what is your knee-jerk reaction? Beautiful viewer who stumbled upon my neck of the woods? Which one would you say you'll remember with a more positive inclination? I ask this because the answer should be pretty obvious. Despite being done in one take, the tank jump is clearly the more impressive endeavour because you can tell it probably required a lot of preparation, setup, they had to ensure the lighting was correct, the camera positioning, contingencies for if it failed or there was an accident. There's just a lot of moving parts with this scene, plus the simple fact that you can clearly see what's going on. With the taken fence, you can barely tell what's even going on, so it's so disorienting. The point of the scene, I assume, is to illustrate the panic and intensity of the situation Mills is in, but Indy did that in one take and I wasn't feeling horrendously nauseous in record time as a result. This kind of stuff is also present in fight sequences. I bring up Raiders of the Lost Ark, specifically the fight between Indy and the burly moustache gentleman. It's clear, with minimal camera takes, so you can perceive what's happening. It's well lit, so everything is clear in frame. And it's beyond evident that the stunt guys and Harrison Ford himself know what they're doing, as well as the camera operators and Spielberg. It's just good. Now, on the opposite end, there's 2011's Alex Cross, which has without a doubt one of the worst fight scenes ever committed against the art of film. Look at this garbage! Who let Michael J. Fox direct a scene in an already mediocre movie? The movie's not that great to begin with, but this scene single-handedly sinks it so hard Leonardo DiCaprio might as well have been on board. From this scene, we can tell the camera crew and the actors know less about what they're doing. It's probably not a fair comparison between a Spielberg movie and Alex Cross, of all things, but when a movie that came out over 30 years ago has cinematography 1,000 times better in a scene that has less stakes overall in the final confrontation between the protagonist and the antagonist, then something's clearly a bit odd. These two scenes, two from very different modern movies unrelated to each other, showcase very big problems with modern stunt work. The cinematography is not as well coordinated, and the lighting is just not done in a way that you can accurately see what's happening on screen. It's not to say Alex Cross should have had the two characters fight around a grounded airplane, or that Liam Neeson should have jumped over a tank instead of a fence. These are much more dangerous stunts, so I get why people are more hesitant to do them. But I'd much rather watch the plane fight in Raiders, and only that fight, over the entire duration of Taken 3's runtime. And now that I am teetering on the edge of vomiting due to rewatching that Alex Cross scene for more than half a second, let's continue. Practicality doesn't just extend to stunt work, it's also a big proponent of props and effects for movies as well. Now, CGI has done a lot of wonderful things in movies. We can watch a continent-sized alien ship literally destroy sections of the Earth's landmass, and also see actors who have since passed on revived in digital form to act alongside still living actors. This second part is, to be polite, tasteless as fuck in most cases, but it's still worth mentioning as something films are capable of doing nowadays. Could you imagine telling James Dean, like 60 years ago, that he'd be recreated digitally and brought back to life in a movie that would be announced over half a century after his death? I mean, he'd probably punch you in the gob and have the Looney Tunes called on you, but that's quite an insanely futuristic concept. But let's be real. Practical effects not only still have their place in film, but still hit just as hard, if not harder, than computer-generated effects. Let's see. What's a great example of this being demonstrated? I just can't think of anything. Certainly not a 1982 horror film that was soullessly remade in 2011. No, certainly not. Yes, the 1982 thing and the 2011 thing are certainly worth bringing up here. John Carpenter's The Thing is rightly held as one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and a good portion of that is down to praise of the practical effects used for the monster. Puppets, props, and puddles of fake blood all come together in goriest manner to portray this unpredictable and unbelievable alien. These effects still hold up today. Well, most of them do. The 2011 thing is barely worth mentioning in comparison, because with the CGI involved, it's basically just another run-of-the-mill horror movie that rides the coattails of something great that came before it. Now let me be clear, the CGI isn't bad, but because it's obviously computer generated when compared with the puppets and props of the 1982 original, the 2011 film just doesn't hit as hard and isn't as intense, because when looking at them side by side, it's obvious which effects stand out more, in a good way. I don't care as much about Mary Elizabeth Winstead or Tormund Giantsbane versus a computer creation, but with Kurt Russell and Keith David and the Alien Muppet Show, you bet your arse I care about that. Now, let's try and combine the two elements. In the spirit of CGI, stuntwork and cinematography, I present to you two one-take action scenes. The Avengers vs. Chitauri sequence in 2012's The Avengers, and the hallway fight in episode 2 of season 1 of Netflix's Daredevil. Yes, I've talked about that scene before, but it will literally never stop being relevant, so I'ma keep bringing it up. Bitch. On a technical level, this scene in Avengers is sound. It goes between all the heroes to illustrate their capabilities. It goes between aerial and ground takes to attempt both grand and grounded shots. And the CGI is good. It is good. In terms of feeling the impact of the scene though, there isn't as much besides the emotional attachment I have to the characters I see. The stakes only exist in that I like these characters. The cinematography doesn't help that, nor does any of the stunt work or lack thereof. It's merely a visual spectacle. That's really all it is. Now, if we look at the hallway fight in Cutman, yes, the cinematography is equally as good, if not better, but we also care due to the stakes the episode has established. The devil is injured, exhausted, and pissed off. He needs to save the little boy trapped in the room at the end of the hallway. We're taken on a physical and mental journey. We see the devil throw down with multiple armed assailants. He gets more and more tired and pained as the scene continues, yet he continues as well. It's a serious test for him, physically and mentally. One that he barely passes by the end, breathless and injured. The one camera shot emphasizes this because the impact would be lessened if it was done like a regular fight scene with more than one camera take. The fact it's all done in one shot means we see the intense pressure the devil is under. And as a result, we feel it more as well. The Avengers one-shot is great on a visual level, but the Cutman one-shot is great on a visual, technical, and emotional level. It does it all while also being incredibly well shot and choreographed. Of course, it should be acknowledged that they're both going for something different, right? One's a TV show and another's a movie, I get all that. But both exist in the same universe and the same genre, arguably. So I figured there was a comparison worth bringing up here. One achieves mainly spectacle, while the other achieves spectacle, emotional weight, and intensity. In the end, this is not meant to harp on CGI or computer-generated effects at all. I mean, I have done that, but it's not intended to. Because it is capable of some great things, and it's admittedly a little bit easier and streamlines the creative process. That being said, practical effects should not be negated from entertainment. Not only do they arguably take more work to produce, but they ground your story, make it a little more weighted and believable. Stunts especially are great to watch and take no short amount of balls. And puppets and props allow you to gross people out and generate interest in your content even decades later. Both have their place, but as we advance more into digital tisms, practicality is becoming an ever more obscure art form that has more than earned the respect that it demands.